Streaming now, this is the Wood TV Live Desk.
And good afternoon, everyone. Phil Penarski here with the Wood TV Live Desk. A story that has been getting a lot of attention this week has, of course, been the deaths of a mother and her two daughters in what authorities are calling a murder-suicide in Allegan County. Cindy Klaus and her two daughters, Autumn and Mackenzie, were found dead Saturday, along with Klaus's partner, Roger Hager. Police say that Hager killed the three of them before turning the gun on himself. Our very own Ken Kolker has been on top of this story since it first broke over the weekend. We've got continuous coverage over on our website, woodtv.com. But of course, this story obviously leads into a greater discussion regarding domestic violence and how that impacts a lot of people, whether we may know it or not. So joining us today is Beth Larson. She is the Executive Director of Resilience, and she's going to be helping us have this very difficult discussion while also bringing up a lot of tips and ways that we can help ourselves if we are the victim of domestic violence, and also keep an eye out for those that we love most. Beth, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Phil.
And of course, stories like this, they bring up that difficult conversation. In cases like this, it's very heartbreaking, but it feels so much like other ones that we've been reading and seeing about over the past couple of years, even over the past couple of months, really, for a lot of people. Police tell us that there were no previous calls of violence that were made in that case, but of course we hear that a lot in a lot of other cases. How often is this really the case where there has been, quote unquote, no previous signs of violence, but in the end it turns out something as dangerous as this?
Phil, it is quite common in some of the more recent cases over the last several years. That is a common denominator often. And, so much of that is the tactics used to isolate and to instill such a tremendous amount of fear that if you do reach out for help, that the violence will escalate, or threats are made that make people so fearful to reach out for help because they don't want to see the violence escalate or to see it get any worse.
Right, and of course we also want to kind of touch on, before we continue further in this conversation, I want to remind everybody that if you head on over to our website, woodtv.com, we do have a lot of helpful links to both Resilience and other national organizations that can help with domestic violence. Of course, you can find that over on woodtv.com, and if you're watching us on Facebook, you can also click that link in the description box and in the comment section, and it will take you directly to our website where you can find those links. Beth, continuing on with this discussion, and for a lot of people, they hear about these things, but maybe they haven't experienced it themselves, maybe don't know the signs to really be looking for. Are there any specific red flags that you kind of tell people to keep an eye out for, just to be on top of situations like this so they don't progress further?
Yeah, so typically what we see in situations is when there are red flags is extreme jealousy, an escalation in the tactics used to control that person's behaviors or access to anything we might associate with independence. So whether that's finances and just communication externally. Other red flags to watch for are threats of harm are some of the most obvious. Now in our digital world, watching for tracking of your activities behind the scenes on your phone, on your devices, and really needing to pay attention to both implicit and explicit threats that are being made. Oftentimes when individuals are identifying these red flags and do reach out for help, it isn't uncommon for violence to escalate. And that is most oftentimes when we see intimate partner homicide, is when someone has taken some concrete steps to try to escape. And unfortunately, as you mentioned, that it does tend to catch police officers and law enforcement by surprise. A lot of times we don't see that individuals have been connected to services to try to help safety plan and come up with measures to put in place to keep them safe in their next step in that process.
Absolutely. And we did learn just yesterday, again, our Ken Kolker has been on top of this story specifically, that the mother, Cindy Close, she actually had intentions of leaving her partner and that they had been having relationship issues. But again, we keep hearing that maybe from some people saying that, oh, well, if you're having problems or things are starting to get violent, why don't you just leave? But of course, she did have plans to leave and still this outcome happened. Can you discuss maybe why just leaving isn't always the best situation and how that could maybe even be more dangerous?
Absolutely. Because of what you've just described, yes, violence often escalates when abusers perceive or are experiencing a loss of control and a loss of power over that individual, and so their behaviors tend to escalate. And we do see that, too often times. That situation play out. That's why, our message to the community is to call us first. You don't When you call our helpline or another agency's helpline in your local area, there are many agencies like Resilience throughout West Michigan that have 24-hour helplines, and you don't have to give us even your name. We can provide you with valuable safety planning resources and connect you to what you need without even disclosing necessarily who you are. Um, and all of our services are free and confidential.
Yes, absolutely. And I do want to touch on those helpful things that Resilience provide to people who may be suffering from this in just a few seconds. But before that, it can be very difficult. Say somebody maybe is starting to notice some of these signs with somebody they know or maybe even with themselves. And it can be pretty difficult to maybe stand up for themselves or someone they care about or speak out. Can you maybe provide just some helpful ways that people can still help them out even with such a difficult thing to do in front of them?
Well, I think that first and foremost, it's we have to remember that individuals who are in these scenarios, they know their situation best. And so um, to ensure that they're aware of what services are available, how to access them, and then as a friend, as a supporter, as a colleague, and a peer, to provide that level of support, to listen without judgment, and to offer and ask how you can be helpful to them as they navigate this situation, and listen. Listen to what it is that they need, and try not to impose what you as a friend or a family member think is best, because they know their situation better than anyone else.
Absolutely. And Beth, kind of wrapping things up today, Resilience, a lot like a bunch of the national organizations that kind of handle these sort of situations. Can you maybe talk about, you touched on a little bit earlier, maybe talk about some of the services that Resilience provides to victims or those who maybe witness domestic violence and really want to get out there and help as best they can?
Yeah, so first and foremost, we have our 24-hour helpline that is staffed around the clock. It's we can respond in both English and Spanish, any other native languages. We use Certified Languages International, so language barriers are not an issue for us. Many agencies like Resilience across the region have 24-hour helplines. In addition to that, so that's kind of the first point of entry. If you find yourself unable to make a phone call because of the situation that you're in, we have an emergency email account that is monitored around the clock. That email address is Ginny, GINNYP 411 at gmail.com. Some of our partner agencies have the ability for you to text immediately. And then other services will, once you reach out, you'll be assessed to determine what it is that will, to assess for safety, to do immediate safety planning, but also to find out from you what you hope your next step is. We have emergency shelter facilities. We have, if our emergency shelter facilities are full, which many of us often are right now, we have the ability to look at hoteling and looking at alternative spaces to keep you safe in the immediate future. And then our ongoing services are for support, case management, advocacy, legal advocacy, supportive housing. We do forensic nurse exams around the clock. So if you've recently been sexually assaulted, we can help work with you we have trained nurses that can collect forensic evidence to be used and preserved. And our prevention programming is there to work with youth and adults throughout the community to help establish better understanding of what healthy relationships need to look like, and then also to create spaces in our community, our workplaces, and ensure that employers know how to support their employees through these difficult situations.
Absolutely. All right, Beth. Well, I appreciate you stopping by the Wood TV Live Desk today. Lots of great information. And I want to remind everybody that if you or someone you know is the victim of domestic violence, you can find a lot of resources, including Resilience themselves, over on our website, woodtv.com. Beth, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you, Phil. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. And we want to thank everybody else for tuning in to this latest edition of the Wood TV Live Desk. I'm Phil Penarski, and we hope you have a great rest of your day.